Mr. Chocolate by Matt Martinek. Ricky was one sick fuck, as was I. That's why we got along so well together. We first met at Addison's Chocolate, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. He ran one of the grinders. I ran a conch mixer. It was just a job. Neither of us set out to work in chocolate. Hell, after working at that place for a few years, most people grew an aversion to chocolate altogether. It was kind of cool, though, to know we were making such a beloved product that was consumed all over the world. It could have been much worse. We sat together at lunch every day. They gave us an entire hour to eat, which most people couldn't stand. I mean, really, who the hell needs an entire hour for lunch? We would have much rather had half of that so we could leave a half hour earlier at the end of the day. But, hey, we didn't make the rules. What that hour did afford, however, was the ability to get to know a person very well. I mean, figure it out. An hour a day, 5 days a week, close to 52 weeks a year. That's about 260 hours of bullshitting a year. About anything and everything. We did have some things in common. We were both in our mid-20s, single, lived alone, and we both absolutely loved horror. Movies, books, comics, real-life serial killers. We just ate it up. It was not uncommon to be hit with a question like, "What's your favorite kill from the Friday the 13th series?" Which, in case you were wondering, I answered with the sleeping bag against the tree scene, of course. Or, who's your absolute favorite serial killer? Mine's a toss-up between Bundy or Kemper, depending on my mood. It was those types of topics that let us pass the time with ease. Our workstations were right next to each other as well, so it was easy to hear each other over the hum of the machines. "So, Dave, serious question." Ricky looked puzzled, deep in thought. "What's that?" I had an idea that it might be a good one. "Ed Gein, do you think he was really mentally disabled, or do you think he really understood what he was doing, especially with the wearing of the skin and such?" Ricky was such a thoughtful boy. "Oh, definitely mentally ill. Just a simpleton who missed his mommy and snapped out. I think he just wanted to have that closeness with a female. Hence the titty vest, nipple belt, and shoebox full of pussies." I had actually contemplated this before. "Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. That's why he's not a favorite of mine. He really didn't have a solid plan. Didn't have his shit together enough to get away with anything for the long term." Ricky shook his head in disapproval. He definitely had his ideas. About a year or so into our friendship, Ricky started to miss work. A lot. Usually a day every week. I didn't think much of it, since I knew Ricky liked to party. I definitely didn't want to lose his company at work, though, so I did inquire. He seemed a little surprised that I did. "Well, Dave, I didn't really want to tell you this, but I'm working on something at home. It's kinda taking a lot of my time. It's my pet project." Ricky was smiling ear to ear as he quietly divulged this info. "What the hell is it? Are you making something? And why the fuck are you whispering? Please tell me it's not a fucking bomb or something." I was honestly intrigued. "Oh, Christ, Dave, keep it down. And no, it's not a bomb. Definitely more artsy than that. I can't really explain it here. You gotta see it for yourself. I mean, if you are truly interested." Ricky was sneering devilishly. "Fuck yes, of course. With that look you got on your face, now I gotta see it." I laughed as I said it. "Dave, one more thing. Can I trust you?" His face became serious and stern, and he stared me right in the eyes. I nervously nodded my head, and we went back to work. I was no longer sure I should have opened that can of worms after all. It was the Friday after I had approached Ricky about his absence, and Ricky thought it was finally time to show me this project he had been working on. He insisted on having a few drinks beforehand, so we went to a local bar after work. We both got pretty hammered within a few hours, as neither of us would ever shy away from a drink. I was more of a vodka guy, and he was more whiskey. We went shot for shot until he decided it was time for this unveiling, as he called it. I didn't really know what I was in for, but I followed Ricky to his house, not wanting to be looked at as some kind of pussy. As we arrived, I could see why Ricky was a bachelor. His house was small, dilapidated, and messy as fuck. Junk everywhere. "I would have tidied up a little, but you know how it is." He pulled me by the arm before I could be too critical. He led me to a door at the end of the hall, which was closed shut. We stopped at the door. Ricky looked at me. "Are you sure?" I was not sure at all, in fact, but I nodded the affirmative instead. He pulled a key from his jeans pocket, unlocked the door, and opened it slowly. What I saw was amazing. There stood a huge black desk, shimmering like polished obsidian, with 4 life-sized skulls sitting on top of it in an arc shape. They were glowing purple, as Ricky had a backlight installed above the display. "Holy fuck, Ricky! That's badass! Where'd you get those skulls? They look so realistic." I was impressed. "Oh, this is my altar I've made. It's a work in progress, though. Much more to come." Ricky spoke these words with confidence and pride. "What more are you gonna do? Put up some inverted crosses and shit? That would look killer." I noticed Ricky was looking down at the floor as I spoke to him. "More skulls, more bones. But it's just so hard to find these girls, and taking 'em apart's a bitch. That's what takes up the real time, and getting rid of the rest is difficult." Ricky raised his eyes to mine, expecting a response. I waited a little, then I busted out laughing. I wasn't falling for it. "Ha ha ha, you sick bastard!" I moved towards the skulls and took one in my hands. As I lifted it, a tooth fell out onto the floor. As I heard it hit with a clink, my heart fell, and I instantly got sick to my stomach. I was not prepared for it, not at all. "Fuck, Dave, be careful. Now I gotta glue that thing back in there. You gotta be gentle with them. They're not toys." This guy was for real. I was frozen for a few moments, thinking of what I should do. I was disgusted, but I was somewhat excited at the same time. This was the big time. No fucking around. Ricky was living it every day of his life. I set the skull back on the desk and sat on the floor, I didn't know what else to do, next to the tooth. "Well, I know it's a lot to take in, Dave, and you can walk away if you want. I understand. But I've been thinking. I could use your help. We could do it together. Our own special thing. And we've studied it. We could be great." Ricky's excitement was growing as he laid it out for me. "Jesus Christ, I can't believe it. This is insane. I don't know if I can do it." I started to rock back and forth and hyperventilate. I was losing it. Ricky helped me to my feet and walked me out of the room. "There's one more thing I need to show you, Dave. You have to see it." He took me to his cellar door, and when he opened it, the scent of death overtook me. It was as if 100 dead animals were decomposing down there, rotting. I instantly vomited all over Ricky's kitchen floor. "It's okay, Dave. Get yourself together. You'll get used to the smell, but for now, put this on. It will still be bad, but it'll help." Ricky handed me a respirator, and I gladly strapped it on. Ricky guided me by the arm into his basement. My heart beat faster with every stair we descended. For a moment, I thought I was having a fucking heart attack. Part of me wanted to run, and part of me needed to see. And I saw all right. There she was, some nameless woman, ripped apart in pieces in the midst of a dismantling of epic proportions. Her head was resting on an old wooden table in a massive pool of blood. One eye was already torn out, exposing the empty blackened socket. The other eye was wide open and staring at me, and it looked as if the eyelid was completely removed. The blood-soaked hair was resting beside it, stringy and gluey and still attached to the scalp. Her deflated, wet-looking breasts were on the floor next to the chair, looking shrunken and bluish. The brown nipples so small they were almost non-existent. Black flies encircled the pieces of the poor woman. I looked away. It took me a while to get into the swing of things, but, as with anything, we desensitize and we adapt. Ricky was the mastermind. I was just his wingman and disposal assistant. I refused to kill anyone. It was not in me to do such a thing. But after that, anything was fair game. I became an expert at the bone saw. A person has absolutely no idea how much force it takes to get a human body apart. The sinew, the muscle, the bone. It really is an art form. And even after the fact, we still had to clean the bones and bleach the skulls, which were not quick processes either. It literally took days to take care of one corpse. No wonder why Ricky was missing so many days of work. Weeks turned into months, and the women of Milwaukee were in an absolute fucking panic. Ricky tried to snag one every 2 weeks or so, sometimes with success, sometimes not. As the panic spread, the women got a little more wary of Ricky's pickup tactics at these bars. Sometimes he would come home empty-handed, and we would just get drunk and work on our altar, maybe play some video games after. And as we went along, we did decide to experiment a bit. The first part we chucked into the cocoa grinder was a decomposed eyeball. Ricky threw it in nonchalantly, as I was acting as the lookout. We were giddy as it was chewed up and disappeared into the bean grains altogether. Not a fucking trace. The next day, it was the tip of a pinky finger. Same result. We started to bring a pocketful a day to work. Teeth, hair, fingernails, pieces of skin, anything small that we would love to see made into a candy bar of some sort. To think, someone in Europe could be snacking on a chocolate-covered eyeball, or someone in Scandinavia could be chewing on milk chocolate toenails. It gave a strange, sick satisfaction to both of us. It was a challenge to see how many body parts we could send out the door of the factory for human consumption. This went on for months, and the cool thing was it had never been done before. Unless I just hadn't heard of it, that is. The altar we were constructing was truly something to behold. It was a shame we had to keep it a secret between us, because its grandiosity, however morbid and severe, was truly befitting of a museum. We used whatever we could of the bodies, but the bones were the most important parts, as well as the bulk of the display. Skulls, arms, and legs were the easiest to work with by far. We did dabble with hands and feet, but the fingers and toes had to be wired together for support, and that was just a pain in the ass. All of the unused pieces were either buried in the forests of Wisconsin or melted in acid. But it was worth it. The altar was a monstrosity that ended up swallowing the entire room. The skulls were the centerpiece, of course, but we had the arms set up in such a way that they reminded me of dragon's wings, flaring out from each side of the table from the floor to the ceiling. We were up to 13 bodies. 13! And then, out of the blue, it happened. A little girl from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, bit into a fucking toe bone, right in the middle of her chocolate bar. I guess the grinder wasn't as foolproof as we thought. Obviously, this was a big fucking deal. Huge! We had made a mistake. The toe incident was all over the press, with video of the poor girl and her pissed-off parents talking about it on the news, and actually showing off the bone on camera. The authorities knew exactly where to go to find out what the fuck was going on, too, as we were the only plant that supplied these bars. Within a day, they were knocking on the front door of Addison's Chocolate. All the workers were sent home. The factory was shut down, and Ricky and I were scared to absolute fucking death. We knew it was just a matter of time before they put the pieces together, and all we could do was try to keep our cool as best we could. We made a pact to stay away from each other, and Ricky said he would begin to dismantle the altar. Meanwhile, forensic experts were inside the factory, emptying every grinder and every conch, getting ready to test for any traces of human remains. I was honestly formulating a plan on which way I was going to commit suicide when it came on the news that Ricky had turned himself in. I couldn't fucking believe it as his photo popped up on the screen. He confessed to every single thing, took the blame entirely on himself, didn't mention me at all. It's crazy how things work out sometimes. Every employee at Addison's had to make a statement to the police, which I also agreed to, of course. I said I knew nothing of Ricky's exploits or his double life. I said I barely knew him at all, in fact. A part of me felt terrible that he took the whole damn thing upon himself. But then again, I think maybe that's exactly what he wanted all along. When all was said and done, Ricky had 13 bodies under his belt, no small feat, and became forever known as Mr. Chocolate. And the altar? He left it for the authorities to dismantle. Honestly, I'm just glad someone else got a chance to see it and appreciate what we had done. I think of Ricky often, as well as the adventures we had. Strangely, I wouldn't change a thing.